Ladies and gentlemen, God speaks in whispers, not thunder. When people think about God speaking, they often imagine a booming voice from the clouds, a parting of the skies, or some unmistakable miraculous event. But the truth is far more subtle and far more beautiful. God does not need thunder to reach you. The infinite, the divine mind, the source, whatever name you give it, is already woven into every thread of your existence. And because it is always with you, it does not need a shout. God speaks softly in whispers that rise out of everyday life. The problem is not that God is silent. The problem is that we are often too noisy inside to hear. Our worries, our doubts, our endless chatter about what's wrong or what might go wrong. That is the thunder. God's whisper is always there, but it requires stillness, trust, and openness to perceive. Wayne Dyer would often say, "You'll see it when you believe it." What he meant is that reality is not waiting for you to beg for proof. It is waiting for you to align your vision, your hearing, your perception so that the subtle guidance becomes visible and audible. Florence Scovel Shinn expressed the same truth differently. Intuition is a spiritual faculty and does not explain, but simply points the way. The whisper is that intuition, that inner nudge, that sudden clarity, that wordless knowing. Think about how whispers work in human life. If someone whispers to you, you have to lean in, you have to quiet down, you have to pay attention. The act of listening to a whisper changes you. You become more sensitive, more present, more focused. That is exactly how God's whispers are designed. They invite you to lean in toward spirit, to slow down, to soften your heart, and to turn away from the noise of fear. The whisper in everyday life. You may not hear words, but the whisper comes through circumstances. A friend you haven't spoken to in years suddenly calls at the exact moment you were thinking of them. That's a whisper. A book falls off a shelf, and the exact line you read answers a question you've been carrying. That's a whisper. You get delayed in traffic and miss an accident that happened just moments before. That's a whisper. The whisper does not impose. It does not demand. It does not frighten. It simply nudges. The question is, are you listening? Wayne Dyer would remind her students that every delay is truly a blessing in disguise. She taught that the spiritual law of non-resistance means you don't fight what shows up, but you affirm its hidden good. This is the art of listening to the whisper. Instead of resisting or complaining, you ask, what message is here for me? How is God guiding me right now? Why God chooses whispers now? Some people ask, why whispers? Why not something loud and clear so no one misses it? Because the whisper is about relationship. If God shouted, there would be no need for faith, no space for growth. The whisper respects your freedom, your awareness, your choice to tune in or to ignore. It honors the divine spark within you, trusting that you will develop the inner ear to hear. Wayne Dyer said, the highest form of ignorance is when you reject something you don't know anything about. The whisper allows you to know by experience, by subtle recognition, by that deep aha moment that arises not from force, but from alignment, cultivating the inner ear to hear God's whispers. You must cultivate silence. Silence is not the absence of sound. It is the absence of resistance. You can sit in the middle of a noisy city, and if your heart is open, you will hear the whisper. You can be in the quietest countryside, but if your mind is stormy, the whisper will be lost. Florence Scovel Shinn gave her students powerful affirmations to quiet the noise of fear. One of her most famous was, I have a wonderful work in a wonderful way. I give wonderful service for wonderful pay. What's powerful about affirmations is that they reprogram the mental noise. Instead of worry, you are repeating truth. Instead of fear, you are planting faith. And in that faith, the whisper becomes audible. So here is an affirmation to align with the whisper. Why I am receptive to the still, small voice of God within me. Divine guidance comes to me clearly and easily, and I hear it with joy. Everyday life is alive with God's whispers, and I am attentive to them. Whisper vis ego. There is another reason God whispers. The ego shouts. The ego is urgent, fearful, insistent. You better hurry. What if it goes wrong? You need to control this. The whisper is the opposite. It is calm, steady, unhurried. It never pressures. It simply invites. When you feel pressure, fear, or compulsion, you are hearing the ego. When you feel peace, even if the instruction is surprising, you are hearing God's whisper. Think of the times in your life when you followed a peaceful nudge, even when it made no logical sense, and later it turned out to be perfect. That was the whisper. Florence Shinn would say, intuition is the magic path, the beeline to your demonstration. And she was right, the whisper is the straightest line between you and your good. Examples of whisper guidance: 1. In relationships, you feel uneasy about a conversation, the whisper says, wait. You wait and the perfect timing arrives. 2. In work, you feel drawn to call someone, though you don't know why. That call leads to an opportunity. 3. In health, you suddenly feel guided to drink more water, to rest, or to change a habit, and your body responds with energy. 4. In creativity, a new idea flashes in your mind almost out of nowhere. That's the whisper planting seeds. Living by the whisper, to live by the whisper, is to live a guided life. You stop forcing and you start flowing. You stop demanding and you start allowing. You stop doubting and you start trusting. It is not that thunder never comes. Sometimes life brings big, dramatic events, but even those are preceded by whispers. If you train yourself to listen to the small, you rarely need the big shake-ups. When you ignore the whisper, life may raise the volume. But when you honor the whisper, you walk in grace. A practice to hear the whisper here is a simple daily practice to open your ears. 1. Morning alignment. Begin each day with the affirmation, I am divinely guided today. I listen with the ears of spirit. 2. Pause often throughout the day. Take short pauses. Breathe. Ask silently, what is the whisper here? 3. Journal the nudges. Write down small intuition synchronicities or coincidences. Over time, you'll see a pattern of divine communication. 4. Respond with trust. Act gently on the whispers. Even small steps build faith and strengthen your spiritual ear. Everyday life is sacred. One of the most liberating spiritual realizations is this: you don't need to climb a mountain, retreat into a monastery, or escape the ordinary world to find God. God is not hiding from you in some distant temple, only accessible through rituals or extraordinary conditions. No, Spirit is right here, now, in the very fabric of your everyday life. The sacred is not separate from the ordinary. It is the ordinary, transformed by your awareness. When you recognize that every moment is infused with divine intelligence, you realize that life itself is your temple. Washing the dishes, answering emails, waiting in line at the grocery store. All of these are holy encounters if you have the eyes to see. Wayne Dyer often reminded his audiences, when you dance, your purpose is not to get to a certain place on the floor. It's to enjoy every step along the way. That enjoyment, that presence, is what makes life sacred. Florence Scovel Shinn, in her own affirming way, declared, the invisible forces are ever working for man, who is always pulling the strings himself, though he does not know it. When you see life as sacred, you recognize those invisible forces at play in even the smallest events. Sacredness revealed in the ordinary. Think about this. Every sunrise is a miracle. Every heartbeat is a miracle. Every conversation is an opportunity to touch eternity. But because these things are daily, we often stop noticing. We reserve the word sacred for rare occasions, weddings, births, funerals, religious ceremonies, while missing the sacredness of sipping tea, holding a child's hand, or hearing a kind word. When you open your awareness, you start to notice the smile of a stranger on the street is not random. It is Spirit smiling at you. The unexpected kindness someone shows you is God's love wearing human form. Even challenges, yes, even those are sacred because they carry the seed of your growth, your awakening, your transformation. Wayne Dyer wrote, the game of life is a game of boomerangs. Man's thoughts, deeds, and words return to him sooner or later with astounding accuracy. This means every interaction you have in your everyday life is part of this sacred game. Every moment is an invitation to plant seeds of kindness, love, and faith that will return to you multiplied. Why we miss the sacred? Why do we fail to notice that everyday life is sacred? Because we are often waiting for something bigger, we say. When I get the promotion, then I'll be grateful. When I meet the right partner, then I'll feel blessed. When I achieve this or that goal, then life will feel meaningful. But God is not waiting until then to show up. God is here now. The promotion is sacred, but so is the email you send today. The soulmate is sacred, but so is the smile you give a stranger. The financial breakthrough is sacred, but so is the dollar in your wallet now. Wayne Dyer put it this way, there is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. Happiness is not something that waits for a grand event. It is something that illuminates each step of the journey. Sacredness is the same. It's not something you earn after some cosmic achievement. It is the quality of presence you bring to this very moment. Affirmations for sacred awareness. Wayne Dyer taught her students to use words to command the invisible forces. She knew that affirmations realign the mind with truth. To recognize everyday life as sacred, try affirming, every moment of my life is holy, for God is in it. I see the divine in the ordinary and the extraordinary alike. Life is not mundane, life is miraculous, and I live in constant gratitude. Say these aloud as you go about your day. Whisper them while you're cooking, walking, or waiting. These affirmations tune your mind to the frequency of sacredness, so that what was once invisible becomes obvious. Seeing with new eyes, sacredness is not about changing your life. It's about changing how you see your life. Two people can experience the same moment. One sees boredom, annoyance, or inconvenience. The other sees a lesson, a blessing, or a miracle. Wayne Dyer insisted, man can only receive what he sees himself receiving. If you don't see the sacred, you miss it. But once you expect sacredness, life begins to mirror that expectation. So the invitation is to look again with fresh eyes. That conversation you dread might actually be an opening for healing. That problem you face might contain your greatest lesson. That delay might be divine timing at work. Wayne Dyer expressed this truth when he said, change the way you look at things and the things you look at change. The sacred doesn't wait to appear. It was always there. The shift happens when your eyes are open. Living in sacred rhythm. When you live with the awareness that everyday life is sacred, something remarkable happens. Your pace changes. You stop rushing. You stop treating the present moment as something to get through, so you can arrive at the real thing later. You recognize that whatever this is right now, is the real thing. Eating becomes a sacred act of nourishment. Walking becomes a sacred act of connection with the earth. Speaking becomes a sacred act of shaping reality. Listening becomes a sacred act of honoring another soul. Wayne Dyer reminded us, man must prepare for the thing he has asked for when there isn't the slightest sign of it in sight. To live as if life is sacred is to prepare constantly. To live in expectation that every moment carries God's blessing, even if it doesn't look like it yet. Practice sacred noticing. Here's a simple practice to help you embody this. Keynote 1. Pause and observe once every hour. Pause and notice one ordinary thing, a sound, a sight, a smell, and declare it sacred. Say silently, this is God showing up. For example, this is God showing up as a bird singing. Bont 2. Gratitude is prayer. At the end of the day, write down 5 ordinary moments that felt sacred. It might be laughter with a friend, the warmth of sunlight, or even a challenge that made you stronger. 3. Act with reverence. Treat small actions as rituals. Pour in a glass of water. Imagine you are pouring divine life force. Send in an email. Imagine you are sending light through words. Everyday life is sacred as unfolding without end. Every breath you take is holy. Have you noticed? The inhale is God giving. The exhale is you releasing. And together they form the rhythm of life itself. You don't command the breath, yet it sustains you. That is the whisper of sacredness. So close, so constant, it is easy to miss. The ground beneath your feet is sacred. The floor you walk on, the earth that holds you up. It is the eternal generosity of creation saying, I support you always. Do not pass over it as if it were nothing. Every step is an embrace from God, reminding you, you are held, you are carried, you are safe. The sound of laughter is sacred. It is spirit breaking through the heaviness of life, reminding you that joy is your natural vibration. When a child laughs, you are hearing the purest echo of heaven. When you laugh, you align with the truth that you were not created for sorrow, you were created for light. Wayne Dyer declared, no man is your enemy, no man is your friend, every man is your teacher. When you live in the awareness that everyday life is sacred, even those who frustrate you are divine messengers. The difficult colleague, the impatient driver, the neighbor who challenges your peace. Each one is a mirror showing you where love has not yet been allowed to fully bloom in you. They, too, are sacred. Look at your hands, sacred instruments. They build, they comfort, they create, they serve. Through them, God expresses touch, care, art, and healing. Look at your voice, sacred vibration. With words you can wound or heal, bless or curse, build bridges or build walls. Each word you speak carries divine energy. Let them be words of light. Wayne Dyer once said, there is no stress in the world, only people thinking stressful thoughts. Sacredness dissolves stress. For when you perceive life as holy, You cannot help but trust its unfolding. The traffic jam becomes not an irritation, but a pause in the dance. The delay in plans becomes not a punishment, but divine choreography. The obstacle becomes not a wall, but a redirection. Sacredness turns frustration into reverence. Try this now. Whisper silently, this moment is sacred. This chair is sacred. This air is sacred. This silence is sacred. Feel how the ordinary shifts under the gaze of recognition. Nothing has changed outwardly, yet everything has changed inwardly. That is the power of perception aligned with spirit. The meal you eat is sacred, not because it is fancy or rare, but because it is life, energy made visible. The farmer, the rain, the sun, the soil, all conspire to bring you nourishment. As you eat, whisper, this is God as bread, this is God as fruit. This is God as water. You will never see food as just food again. It becomes communion. The stranger who holds the door for you, sacred. The dog wagging its tail in delight, sacred. The quiet hum of the refrigerator in the night, sacred. The traffic light turning green, sacred. The letter in the mail, sacred. The H in your body that reminds you to rest, sacred. Wayne Dyer. The game of life is played with words of faith instead of words of fear. Sacredness is not hidden. It is not rare. It is everywhere. What hides it is our habit of fear, our addiction to complaint, our blindness of rushing past the present moment. Pause now. Look around you. Is there a lamp in your room? Sacred. A window? Sacred. Light streaming through? Sacred. Even the shadow is sacred, for without it, you would not perceive the light. Sacredness is not earned. It is revealed. It has always been. The task is not to import God into life, but to realize that God never left. Life is saturated with spirit. Every moment is a revelation waiting to be noticed. The next time you hold someone's hand, remember you are not just touching flesh. You are touching infinity in human form. The next time you look into someone's eyes, pause and realize you are gazing into eternity's mirror. The next time you speak, pause and realize your voice carries the vibration of creation itself. Everyday life is not profane. Everyday life is divine play. The divine wears the mask of traffic, of chores, of bills, of conversations. When you see past the mask, you recognize the sacred actor who has been there all along. And so you affirm again and again, well, I walk in a holy world. Nothing is ordinary to me. Everything is God in disguise. I bow inwardly to the divinity present in this moment. The sacred is the now. It is not tomorrow, not yesterday, but this, always this. Everyday life is sacred. Wayne Dyer flow ongoing. When you wake up in the morning, before you even put your feet on the floor, you can decide this day is not ordinary. This day is sacred. And when you start with that perspective, everything changes. Think about it. You didn't create the breath that just filled your lungs. You didn't order your heart to beat through the night while you slept. You didn't remind the sun to rise this morning. These things happen without your effort. They are gifts. They are evidence that you are already living inside a sacred system, a universe that supports you in ways you don't even think about. We overlook the sacred because we've been trained to look for drama, for something spectacular. But the spectacular is happening right under your nose. The fact that you can hear these words, the fact that you can think about them, question them, agree or disagree with them, that's sacred. That's consciousness. That's spirit moving through you. I've often said, change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change. That's not just a clever line. It's a key to living a spiritually awake life. The glass of water in your hand is not just water. It's a miracle. It traveled from clouds to rain, to rivers, to pipes, to your cup. And here it is, ready to quench your thirst. If you see it as just water, you miss the miracle. If you see it as life itself flowing into you, then you drink with reverence. Sacredness is not about religion. It's not about dogma. It's about awareness. The tree outside your window is sacred. It stands there silently transforming sunlight into oxygen so that you can breathe. The cashier at the store is sacred, a human being with their own dreams, fears, and connection to the same source that flows through you. Even your own body is sacred. Every cell, every beat, every function working in harmony. The problem is, most of us are rushing. We're rushing through meals, rushing through conversations, rushing through the day as if life will begin later when the big event happens. But the big event is now. This right here is life. Sacredness doesn't wait for you to arrive somewhere else. It's already in what's happening right now. Think of it this way. Imagine you're at a concert. The music is playing, but you're staring at the clock, waiting for the finale. You miss the whole performance. That's how most of us live. We're waiting for the finale, the promotion, the relationship, the success story, while the music of our life is already playing. Sacredness is in the music, not in the finale. So I invite you to practice seeing everyday life differently. When someone interrupts you, instead of labeling it an inconvenience, ask yourself, what's sacred here? What am I being invited to notice? When you feel stressed, pause and remember the breath moving in and out of me is sacred. I can come back to that anytime. The universe is never against you. It's always working with you. But if you think of your life as ordinary, you'll treat it as ordinary. If you think of it as sacred, you'll begin to live differently. You'll walk slower. You'll listen more deeply. You'll say thank you more often, not because you're forcing gratitude, but because you truly see the gifts all around you. And when you live that way, something shifts. People around you notice. They feel calmer in your presence. You attract more kindness. More synchronicities show up. It's not magic. It's alignment. You've tuned yourself to the sacred frequency, and life starts to echo it back to you. Look, everyday life doesn't need to be escaped. It needs to be embraced. Your morning coffee, the sound of rain, a hug from someone you love, even paying your bills. It's all sacred if you choose to see it that way. Because in every single act, no matter how small, God is there. You know, I've met so many people who tell me they want a miracle. They say, Wayne, I just want God to give me a sign. I just want something extraordinary to happen so I know I'm on the right path. And I smile because the miracle is already happening. The sign is already here. The extraordinary is disguised as the ordinary. Think about it. You woke up this morning. That's a miracle. Millions didn't. Your heart kept beating through the night without your supervision. That's a miracle. Your body took in oxygen, converted it, kept you alive, and you didn't even have to remind it to do that. That's sacred, but we miss it. We miss it because we're looking for thunder when God is whispering. We're looking for fireworks when Spirit is speaking through the sunrise, through a smile, through the softness of your own breath. I love to tell people, if you want to experience God, look down at your own hands, wiggle your fingers. You're looking at divinity in form. Those hands have the power to comfort, to create, to give, to heal. And then ask yourself, who designed this? Who orchestrated this body, this mind, this life? That's God. That's sacredness. And it's not separate from you. It is you. Now, the ego doesn't like this idea. The ego says life can't be sacred unless it looks glamorous, unless it's dramatic, unless everyone notices. But God doesn't need a stage. God shows up in the quiet, in the simple, in the everyday moments when no one is watching. Have you ever noticed that the most profound moments in your life weren't the ones you expected? They weren't the staged events. They were the little things, the hug you didn't know you needed, the laugh that came out of nowhere, the way a problem seemed to solve itself when you stopped worrying about it. Those are sacred. When I say everyday life is sacred, I mean everything. The commute, the grocery store, folding laundry, paying your bills. Because when you see God in those things, they stop being chores and they become part of your spiritual practice. Driving in traffic becomes a meditation. Doing dishes becomes a prayer of gratitude for having food to eat. Writing a check for your bills becomes a reminder. I'm blessed to have electricity, water, a home. A sacredness is not something you visit once a week in a building. It's something you live in all the time. The real temple is right here. This earth, this body, this breath, this moment. Let me tell you a little secret. When you start treating everyday life as sacred, the universe responds differently. People treat you differently. Opportunities come more easily. Synchronicities start piling up. Why? Because you've shifted your energy. You're no longer in resistance. You're in harmony. And harmony attracts harmony. I want you to try something with me right now. Look around the room you're in. Don't label anything as ordinary. That chair you're sitting in, it's not ordinary. Someone designed it, someone built it, and the wood it's made from came from a tree that started as a seed that grew from sunlight, soil, and rain. That's not ordinary. That's sacred engineering. That light above you, sacred. That pen on your desk, sacred. The air around you, invisible yet keeping you alive, sacred. It's not about forcing gratitude. It's about seeing reality clearly. When you strip away the labels and really look, you realize everything is miraculous. You know, Einstein said you can live life two ways, as if nothing is a miracle, or as if everything is. And I promise you, when you choose the second way, everything in your life shifts. You stop rushing, you stop demanding, you start noticing, you start appreciating. And in that state of appreciation, you're not just happier, you're healthier, you're more creative, you're more connected, because what you focus on expands. If you focus on what's missing, you'll see more lack. If you focus on what's wrong, you'll find more problems. But if you focus on the sacredness of life, life will keep showing you more sacredness. So the question is, how do you want to live? Blind to the miracles that surround you, or awake to the holiness of every step, every sound, every breath? You know, people often come up to me after talk and say, Wayne, I love what you're saying, but my life doesn't feel very sacred. I've got bills, deadlines, kids screaming in the back seat. Where's the sacredness in that? And I say to them, that is the sacredness. See, we've been conditioned to think spirituality only happens when you're sitting in meditation, chanting, or maybe on a yoga mat in some perfectly quiet room. But life is not lived only on the yoga mat. Life is lived in traffic. Life is lived in the kitchen, at the office, in the grocery store, while folding laundry. If God isn't in those moments, where is God? One time, I was running late for a flight, and you know how airports can be. They'll test every ounce of patience you have. I'm standing in line at security, shoes off, belt off, computer out, and the man in front of me is moving at the speed of a glacier. My old self would have gotten irritated. I would have thought, come on, buddy, I've got somewhere to be. But instead, I decided to practice what I teach. I thought, this line is sacred. This delay is sacred. Maybe Spirit is slowing me down for a reason. And you know what? When I got to my gate, I found out the flight had been delayed anyway. My problem was no problem at all. And during that time, standing in line, I had one of the best conversations with a man who became a lifelong friend. That would never have happened if I had resisted the moment. Sacredness is not about changing the outer world. It's about changing the way you look at it. Now, let me tell you something about kids. I have 8 children. 8. So I've had plenty of opportunities to practice seeing the sacred in chaos. If you've ever walked into a house with that many kids, you know it's not exactly a Zen monastery. It's noisy, it's messy, it's unpredictable. But I'll tell you this, some of the holiest moments I've ever experienced weren't in cathedrals, weren't on mountaintops. They were in my living room with peanut butter on the counter, toys all over the floor, and a child climbing onto my lap just to be close. That's sacred. That's God saying, don't look for me in the distance. I'm right here in this hug, in this laughter, in this ordinary miracle. I want you to try something. The next time you're doing something you consider mundane, washing dishes, driving to work, folding clothes, I want you to pause and say to yourself, this is holy. This moment is holy. You'll be amazed at what happens. Suddenly, the warm water on your hands feels like a blessing. The car ride becomes a chance to notice the sky, the trees, the sound of life all around you. The folded shirt becomes a gift of care for the person who will wear it. When you shift your awareness like this, your life doesn't just feel better. It is better because you're not waiting for sacredness to arrive later. You're living it now. Here's the thing, the ego will always try to convince you that sacredness is somewhere else. When I get that job, then I'll feel blessed. When I lose the weight, when I make more money, when I retire, when I finally meet the right partner. Always later, always somewhere else. But God is not later. God is not somewhere else. God is here, right now. In the imperfections, in the messiness, in the laughter, in the tears, if you're waiting for life to become sacred, you'll wait forever. But if you choose to see it as sacred now, you'll never stop finding proof. I remember once walking along the beach, and I stopped to watch a line of ants carrying food back to their nest. Just ants, nothing spectacular, right? But as I watched, I thought, this is sacred too. Look at the intelligence at work here. Look at the cooperation, the persistence. This is life expressing itself. That walk became one of the most spiritual experiences of my life, not because of something dramatic, but because I slowed down enough to notice. And I often wonder, how many miracles do we miss every single day because we're moving too fast? Sacredness is not hidden. It's only overlooked. And let me add this: when you live with the awareness that everyday life is sacred, you treat people differently. You start to realize that cashier, that delivery driver, that coworker, they're not just roles, they're human beings, they're fragments of God in human form. When you smile at them, when you thank them, when you truly see them, you're acknowledging the divine in them. That's why the greatest spiritual practice is not about retreating from the world. It's about showing up in the world with open eyes, open ears, and an open heart. Because when you walk through life seeing it as sacred, you're no longer just living, you're living awake. You know, when I first began teaching, people thought spirituality was about retreating somewhere far away. Maybe you had to go to India or sit in meditation for hours a day or live in a cave. And while those practices can be beautiful, they're not the only way. Because if spirituality doesn't work in your everyday life, what good is it? Spirituality has to work in the carpool lane. It has to work when you're late for work. It has to work when the dishwasher breaks, when the dog throws up on the carpet, when someone cuts you off in traffic. If you can't see God in those moments, then you're missing where God is showing up most. A story, the airport line. I told you earlier about that airport line where I made a friend instead of losing my patience. That's not just a cute story. It's a principle, because every delay, every detour, every unexpected twist in your day is sacred. It's an invitation to trust. When you get stuck in traffic, maybe Spirit is protecting you from something ahead. When a door closes, maybe you're being redirected to something better. Life is always talking to you, always guiding you. The question is, are you listening? Story: 8 kids, one house now, raising 8 kids. I can tell you, I've had plenty of opportunities to practice this. My house was never quiet, never. If you're waiting for sacredness to arrive in silence and perfection, let me tell you, you'll wait forever. I used to walk into the living room, toys everywhere, peanut butter on the counter, chaos all around, and I'd think, this is it. This is sacred too. Because what's sacred isn't the condition. It's the love. It's the presence. It's the laughter. And I wouldn't trade those noisy, messy, sacred moments for anything. Shifting perspective. Einstein said you can live life as if nothing is a miracle or as if everything is. That choice is yours. The tree outside your window, that's a miracle. The fact that you can hear these words, that's a miracle. The stranger who holds the door open for you, that's a miracle. When you change the way you look at these things, the things you look at change. The grocery store becomes a temple. The office becomes a classroom. Your own home becomes a sanctuary. Nothing is excluded. Practice. So here's my challenge to you. The next time you catch yourself saying, this is boring, this is mundane, this is just ordinary life, stop, take a breath, and instead say, this is sacred. This is God disguised as this moment. And watch how your experience changes, because it will. My friends, everyday life is not ordinary. There is no such thing as an ordinary day. Every day is a holy day. Every breath is grace. Every moment is a chance to connect with the infinite. You don't need to wait for miracles. You are living in one right now. So walk out of here today with new eyes. See the sacred in the sunrise, in the traffic jam, in your children's laughter, in the stranger's smile, in the quiet of your own breath. Live as if nothing is ordinary, and you will find that God has been speaking to you all along, through everything, through everyone, through every moment of your beautiful, sacred life. Thank you, I love you, and God bless you.